Coming up, a call to action, find out what you can do to advance third-class medical reform.
Flying acro with no engines, we look at the best glider pilots in the world. Plus, don't stop the presses, books are still king at one company. AOPA Live this week begins in just a moment.
Brightline, instruments for professionals.
The Senate has teed up third-class medical reform for the third time. Now's the time for the House to act, and you can help. Hello, everyone, and welcome to AOPA Live this week. I'm Melissa Rudinger.
And I'm Tom Haynes. Thanks for joining us. 3 times the Senate has passed the Pilot's Bill of Rights 2 by overwhelming bipartisan majorities. The Pilot's Bill of Rights includes third-class medical reform, which would permit most private pilots to fly without recurring visits to a medical examiner. You'd think with that kind of political support on one side of the Capitol, the House would get off the dime.
And the frustration continues to mount why the House hasn't responded to that. But we think this is the right answer for us to get it done.
And that answer is the National Defense Authorization Act of 2017. So what the heck does that have to do with aviation? Well, this time the Senate decided to attach the Pilot's Bill of Rights to something that is most likely to pass the House.
But the NDAA has traditionally been a bill that gets supported by the Senate first, passed on to the House, and is generally passed in a matter of course of business. So we see that, unfortunately, that probably could be later on this year. We'd like to see something happen now, because this reaffirms the idea that this thing is supported. It's time to just go grab the standalone Pilot's Bill of Rights too, and get it done.
And now we need your help to get it done. Now is the time to reach out to your representative in the House. Tell him or her that it's way past time to pass Senate Bill 571, better known as the Pilot's Bill of Rights 2.
Tell them that this has been passed for 3 times by the U.S. Senate with high numbers. It's time for the House to either grab it as a standalone PBR2 or as part of the Senate reauthorization, or certainly when it comes up as time for the National Defense Act, for their congressperson to vote and support this. We have 178 co-sponsors today in the House. Let's get this thing done. It's ready to go.
You've probably already received an email like this. It gives you all the information you need to contact your congressperson. If you didn't get the email, the information is also on aopa.org. Do it today. Together, we can make a difference for the future of general aviation. The new FAA Airman standards are now in effect. As of Wednesday, the standards apply to pilots taking a written or check ride for the private or instrument rating.
AOPA pilot editor Ian Twombly is here with more on the ACS. So Ian, what's it all about?
Yeah, well, Tom, it actually stemmed from an effort to improve the knowledge test. I'm sure many who have taken the knowledge test feel like it's a bit of a challenging process, and really what many of us do is just memorize the questions. Right. And so the FAA, realizing that there were complaints about the structure of those questions and the content of those questions and the relevance, convened an industry group that AOPA co-chaired. And the first thing they decided is that knowledge test needed a standard. And that standard led to the ACS, which also includes the PTS. So the first thing that people will notice when they go for a check ride is that everything is in one document. So there is no more PTS, it's all in the ACS. And that includes everything that was in the PTS in terms of those, steep turn standards and slow flight and everything else. But there's also a couple other areas that I think people will really find interesting. One is the knowledge required for that area of operation. So they spell out in very clear detail what it is you need to know about that element. And then finally, the risk factor associated with it. So this, I think, will be a really nice tool also for instructors and DPEs as they create scenarios around those training operations.
Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of us, you're right, who have taken the tests, knowledge test recently, there's been a lot of questions in there that are completely irrelevant, mm-hmm. and I guess they've fixed that?
Yeah, they've eliminated many questions already, and now when they go to create new ones, there is a standard that will guide them as to what it is they're going to write. So no more questions about the height of blowing sand, or how many GPS satellites there are on a constellation, or other things that we really just don't need to know.
Yeah. But there is some controversy around this. Not everybody agrees on this whole risk management thing.
Yeah, that's true. Many people feel that we should be focusing more on the core skills, that where pilots are really falling down is that stick and rudder stuff, and that's all we should be focusing on. The ACS takes it too far. But of course, many involved in the process see that risk factor, judgment, all those things are a major component of safety, and they need to be standardized or at least talked about in a more concrete and sort of organized way, and hopefully the ACS will do that.
Okay, good. Well, let's hope that it works, and let's hope that there is some flexibility there to make some adjustments along the way.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ian. You can find all the details about the new standards by clicking on the Licensing and Certificates tab at FAA.gov.
You're watching digital video, you're doing it over the internet, and you're on an electronic device. It's pretty normal for most things to be electronic these days. From video shows to ebooks, the digital revolution is shaking up the publishing world. But don't stop the presses. For publisher ASA, the written world is still king, even for new materials like ACS. Paul Harrop reports.
Lots of books.
So many books, so little time, once wrote Frank Zappa, and nowhere is that more true than at Aviation Supplies and Academics near Seattle. In their warehouse, ASA stacks them floor to flight level, and the shipping department is always turning another page.
ASA is one of the leading publishers of aviation training books and software for pilots.
In a world of e-this and digital that, ASA is clicking like on books.
People like the look, the feel of a book in their hands. They want to have something on their shelf. If we're talking right now, I can reach over and grab a book off my shelf, but I can't necessarily. I suppose I could get my phone out and show it to you. But the great thing is we've kind of embraced that as well. We have ebooks, we have digital products, we have apps. We try to provide a method for everyone to train. Some people are more digital, some are books, but you still find a lot of even younger folks that are in the digital era buying books.
Word. ASA's marketing coordinator Brian Snyder says they offer a book for just about anything an aviator could need to study, no matter what chapter you're on as a pilot.
We provide everything from FAA reprints, from FAA handbooks, practical test standards, the new airman certification standards. We have textbooks from various authors. We have textbooks from collaborative groups at universities.
So if you dream of flight like most aviators, author Neil Gaiman says a book is a dream that you hold in your hand. And ASA's books and other products will help you in volumes. Paul Harrop, AOPA Live.
Thanks, Paul. You can find ASA's books and electronic products at asa2fly.com.
And here's a case where electrons are really important. Solar Impulse 2 is finally in New York. The night flight from Pennsylvania ended with a pass over the city and a symbolic flyover of the Statue of Liberty. From here, Solar Impulse 2 will head across the Atlantic, and oh my, what a long flight that is going to be. Well, if that isn't cool enough, check this out. A sailport in the Arizona desert south of Phoenix where radios are optional and the weather is fine for flying more often than not.
Since 1969, Arizona Soaring has taught all of the glider disciplines, including one that is so rare that in this country, those that vie for the top prize would fit comfortably around a dinner table.
Jim Moore met five-time U.S. National Glider Aerobatic champion Jason Stevens to experience firsthand just what a glider can do in the hands of a world-class pilot.
This may look like a typical glider, but it is anything but. Jason Stevens is not a typical glider pilot either. Since 1969, Estrella Sailport in Maricopa, Arizona has been the de facto capital of American glider aerobatics.
It's kind of old-fashioned. You just keep your eyes open and look for traffic and go and fly. So it's a lot of fun, and it's a nice change of pace for a lot of the pilots that come to us.
It's the place where Stevens, as a teenager transplanted from Alaska, began his own journey into glider aerobatics 2 decades ago. I've come here to follow those footsteps, at least the first few.
My first aerobatic ride was in a glider with Les Horvath, who was national champion several times, and ended up becoming my aerobatic instructor back in high school. And I also grew up watching Star Wars and Black Sheep Squadron and all these shows about fighter pilots and pilots that could do amazing things with their machines. So that sort of activity appealed to me, I guess.
This MDM-1 Fox is also a classroom where a powered pilot can learn a lot.
With the gliders, you definitely need finesse, so we teach that to them. And there's some other practical skills that you learn, like dealing with engine out situations, that sort of thing is a lot easier once you've had some glider training. But it's also a lot of fun. And aviation is, I think at its core, mostly about the enjoyment of flight. And this is just another really great way to get enjoyment out of flying.
Okay, you ready? I'm ready. Okay, here we go.
With the glider, it's more about the sound, since we don't have the engine noise covering up a lot of the noises that the airframe makes, wind noise across the air vents and the canopy frame. We can listen to the speed once we train the ear how to listen.
There we go.
I get surprised looks all the time when people say, "You can do that in the glider?" It's amusing, I guess, but it's just because they haven't been exposed to it before and never really thought about it, or they have in their mind a picture of what a glider or a sailplane is and does, and certainly that aerobatic flight is outside of that traditional view. I like the freedom when you're up there and you're doing your maneuvers, and it's I mean, it sounds kind of cliche that it's kind of like being a bird, but it kind of feels that way.
Less than 2 weeks later, I followed Stevens to Texas for the U.S. National Aerobatic Championships, where the lower glider categories, sportsman and intermediate, were filled with U.S. Air Force Academy cadets. The Air Force uses gliders to teach the stick and rudder skills and precision discipline that will serve its pilots well as they progress to jets. Cadet Norman Hitosis and 5 other seniors got some welcome news in the midst of the week-long competition.
We found out that 6 of 6 seniors on the aerobatic demo team were selected to go to pilot training after graduation at the academy. So it's the biggest news we've heard.
Stevens, who spent much of the week towing Air Force gliders into the sky, was denied, for now, a 6th national championship. That trophy went to California pilot Eric Lentz-Gautier, a rising star in the sport. Lucas von Atzigen, a Swiss-born resident of Tennessee, was the only glider pilot flying the freestyle. All 3 will represent the U.S. in the World Championships next month. At North Texas Regional Airport, Sherman Denison, Texas, at the U.S. National Aerobatic Championships, I'm Jim Moore, AOPA Live.
Thanks, Jim. That's some amazing flying. You can read more about glider aerobatics in the July issue of AOPA Pilot Magazine. Digital Edition subscribers can watch and listen as one of the competitors flies a 4-minute freestyle in a glider.
Coming up after the break, a slick new Mooney takes to the skies, and a father and son capture the tales of the F-100 Sabre pilots. You're watching AOPA Live this week.
There are many important things to consider before purchasing an aircraft. Let the experts at Aerospace Reports help guide you through the process. We combine expert knowledge with our long-standing commitment to personalized customer service to perfect your transaction. Learn more at aerospacereports.com.
Welcome back. You're watching AOPA Live this week. The U.S. Navy has canceled plans to jam GPS signals in the vicinity of the China Lake, California Naval Air Weapons Station.
AOPA had raised concerns about the impact on civilian air traffic and the size of the affected area. The Navy did not reveal the cause of the cancellation, other than to say the reason was internal. AOPA had contacted officials with our concerns about the planned outage and its likely impact. The association also had asked the Navy to provide justification for the large geographic area to be impacted by the planned event. AOPA's Director of Airspace and Air Traffic says these outages happen frequently and you should be informed and prepared to deal with them.
These type of interference events are not unusual. There are over 50 unique events each year. We would like to tell pilots, be sure to check NOTAMs, become aware of what the impact is if you get a GPS disruption event, and how you are going to navigate in that type of event, such as with VORs and using air traffic control. AOPA is working with our FAA counterparts to engage with the military and to determine what the impact is on civil aviation, as well as to provide better information to pilots as to what impact they can expect.
You can read more about this issue on the new AOPA.org. Look under the advocacy section. To state the obvious, new airplanes are expensive, much, much more expensive relative to the household income than they were 3 decades ago. And so, no surprise, we're not making and selling as many new piston engine airplanes as we used to.
And so most people are flying airplanes that are, about 30 years old or so, or in my case, maybe more like 45 years old. But hey, most of them have ancient avionics and technology, but we could make those airplanes safer and better if we could install the kind of innovative avionics and equipment that now are found on light sport and experimental aircraft. So, AOPA has proposed a set of guidelines for the FAA, guidelines for modernizing the fleet without having to jump through all of the existing hoops required to certify and install new equipment on old airplanes. In a letter to the FAA boss, Mark Baker said that current agency rules for retrofitting aircraft have driven up cost, stifled innovation, and constrained the production and implementation of new technology that could save lives. Now, in fairness, the FAA has already made it easier to install angle of attack indicators, for example, and it granted an STC to EAA and Dynon Avionics to replace the old-style attitude indicators on many Cessnas and Pipers with a Dynon D10A, which provides attitude, airspeed, altimeter, and more in one 4-inch display. But the FAA can do even better. The AOPA guidelines, we hope, will move them in that direction.
We are running out of air traffic controllers. At least that was the testimony in Congress this week.
Our analysis of FAA's most critical air traffic control facilities, the most complex and busiest ones in the national airspace system, shows that over half of the 23 facilities have certified controller staffing levels well below minimal staffing requirements. These include New York, Atlanta, Dallas, and Chicago TRACONs.
The issue involves training, retirement, and FAA hiring policies, but one congressman says he has the solution.
This is another example of the FAA's longstanding inability to adequately manage its controller workforce. And that's a big reason, I believe, one of the biggest reasons why the ATC reform that I've proposed and we've passed out of this committee, we should take up.
Yes, Mr. Schuster is talking about privatization.
Meanwhile, in the House, the issue of ATC privatization remains the major stumbling block to continued FAA funding, or reauthorization in Washington speak. The Senate has passed already an FAA reauthorization bill, which also includes the Pilot's Bill of Rights 2, which we talked about earlier. They sent it to the House, but some representatives want the House version, specifically Transportation Committee Chairman Bill Schuster, who is the champion of privatized air traffic control. Now, the aviation alphabets, including AOPA, just sent this letter to House leadership. The group urged the House to follow the Senate lead and pass the FAA bill because millions of hardworking taxpayers want Congress to get things done and not let this bill be stalled because of the divisive issue of air traffic control, privatization, and yes, Melissa, that is my blood pressure coming up.
On a faster note, Mooney is celebrating the first flight of the Ovation Ultra. The revamp of the popular and speedy model adds a new interior and a door on the pilot's side. The tail, still Mooney.
For many of us, our fathers are the most influential people in our lives. AOPA senior photographer Mike Fizer has been working on a project with his dad, Bob Fizer, a retired F-100 pilot and former Cessna Citation demo pilot, and all-around good guy, I might add. With his dad, Mike is working to document the tales of the surviving F-100 Super Sabre pilots. Here's his story.
I'm Bob Fizer. I was born July of 1931 on Staten Island, New York. Joined the Air Force in 1951. Went through the aviation cadet program. Flew the T-6, flew the T-28, the T-33. Went on to Luke Air Force Base. On as an IP there in the F-84G, the F-84F, and eventually the F-100.
And I'm Bob Fizer's son. My father and I are here to share a few stories with you on Father's Day. So it's with great pride that I introduce a man I love dearly, respect immensely, United States Air Force Major Bob Fizer, retired, AKA Breezeway, the world's second greatest fighter pilot.
Well, every fighter pilot likes to think that he's number one or he's the best. And I've always called myself the second best fighter pilot in the world. And when I'm asked about that, about who's number one, I said, I don't know, I haven't met him yet. but I won't take the title of being number one because there's too many of them out there. I retired from the Air Force in 1971 and joined Cessna. I was a demo pilot from 71 through 77, and from 77 to 89, I was manager of the demonstration department. The photo missions came along when brochures were required and publications. It was a lot of fun. It was a little bit challenging, but I thoroughly enjoyed it.
My father is a member of the Super Sabre Society, an organization dedicated to the F-100 and the pilots who flew it. Last month, we traveled to Fort Wayne, Indiana, to a small reunion organized by the Society, where a number of F-100 pilots got their last ride. I had my father conduct the interviews, and of course, he was a natural.
The script that we followed, we would inquire about their experiences in the F-100, how much time they had in the airplane, and it brought back memories from me as well as bringing back memories from the guys that we were interviewing. The F-100 and the Super Sabre Society brought all this back to them. Photography and airplanes and the F-100 and the Super Sabre Society have brought Mike and I a lot closer together. I couldn't be more honored to sit down with Mike and talk about the things that we've been through and our experiences and things that have brought us together to celebrate Father's Day. It's a very important day, and I've enjoyed every bit of it.
Well, that's kind of hard to top, so all you AOPA members, happy Father's Day.
Yeah, and that, I'm not just saying that for bullshit. I feel that, Mike.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Bob, for your service. And that's going to do it for this edition. Thanks for watching, and to all the dads out there, happy Father's Day.
We hope you'll join us again next Thursday for another edition of AOPA Live This Week.